Omega crosses the crowded ballroom before Alpha King as the royal crest glows in her presence. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Lily Green and Omega stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been a part of events like these, where the aristocrats of the wolf packs mingled, their power and status clear in every step they took. The marble floors beneath her feet were polished to a gleam, the chandeliers above sparkling like stars in the sky. But to her, the room felt cold, filled with the murmurs of judgment and unspoken thoughts. She crossed the floor, trying to keep her head high, though the weight of every critical gaze made her feel smaller with each step. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't help but feel the sting of their glances. They all knew she was an Omega. They could see her weakness in the way she carried herself. The humiliation was subtle, but it was there, in every whisper, in every sideways glance. Yet, Lily pushed forward, her eyes focused on one goal, to get through the night without drawing attention to herself. She didn't belong here. The grand ballroom, with its gilded walls and shimmering decorations, was meant for people like them. Alphas, betas, those with power and strength. Not someone like her, who had been abandoned by her pack and left to fend for herself in a world that valued strength above all. Her steps faltered for just a moment as she noticed a group of higher-ranked wolves staring in her direction, but she straightened her back and continued on. It wasn't as if she had a choice. But as she made her way across the ballroom, something in the atmosphere shifted. The chatter softened, and an almost tangible silence seemed to settle over the room. Lily's breath caught in her throat as her eyes were drawn to the center of the ballroom. There, standing tall and unmovable, was the Alpha King, Maximus Stone. His presence alone commanded the room, and as soon as his piercing gaze met hers, it felt as though time itself had stopped. The crowd parted in reverence as he took a step forward, his royal crest glowing in the light of the chandeliers. It was as if the very air around him shifted, his power radiating like an undeniable force. Maximus was unlike anyone Lily had ever seen before. He stood with an air of authority and strength, but there was something else, something deep in his eyes that made her heart race. As the music played, Lily could feel the weight of his gaze on her. She tried to look away, but it was as if he were drawing her in, forcing her to acknowledge him. And then, before she could stop herself, she was standing directly before him. The ballroom was filled with the buzz of curious onlookers, all watching intently, but to Lily, there was only him. His eyes were cold, yet intense, and for a moment, it was as though the world around her had melted away. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain: her life was about to change forever. Maximus Stone stood before Lily, his towering presence casting a shadow over her as the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, she couldn't move. She stood there, trapped in his gaze, her heart racing, her breath shallow. The weight of his eyes on her felt like an unspoken command, drawing her closer despite every instinct telling her to turn away. His piercing gray eyes shimmered with an intensity that left her feeling exposed, as though he could see through every layer of her. His posture was regal, every movement deliberate and powerful, yet there was something unsettlingly calm about him. He was a king, but in this moment, he was something more. Lily swallowed hard, trying to regain control of her senses. The music continued to play softly in the background, but it felt distant, as if she were no longer part of the world she had known. It was just her and him, standing in the middle of the grand ballroom. The royal crest on his chest seemed to glow, casting an ethereal light around him, adding to his mystique. She couldn't help but wonder what he saw in her, the lowly Omega who had never belonged in such a grand place. She had never been noticed before, never been anyone's first choice. Yet here she was, standing in front of the most powerful alpha in the kingdom, and he was looking at her as though she mattered. Her mind raced with questions, but no words came. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but never like this. She had always thought that someone like him would never even notice someone like her, that she was invisible to people of his status. But now, here she was, and he was staring at her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only one in the room. For a moment, she wanted to speak, to say something, anything, to break the silence, but the words stuck in her throat. Maximus took a step forward, his movements measured and purposeful, yet there was a grace to them that made her heart flutter. He was so close now that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, a stark contrast to the coldness she had felt when she first entered the ballroom. His presence was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. "You," he said, his voice low and commanding, but not unkind. "You don't belong here." Lily felt a pang of hurt at his words, but she didn't look away. She couldn't. "I know," she replied softly, her voice trembling. "I never belonged." Maximus' gaze softened slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his eyes. "That's not true," he said, taking another step toward her. The crowd around them was still, waiting for something to happen, unsure of what to make of the scene unfolding before them. Lily felt a surge of confusion and wonder. What did he mean by that? Why was he looking at her like this? "You belong here more than anyone," he continued, his voice steady and firm. "I can see it." His words washed over her like a wave, filling her with warmth she hadn't felt in years. She wanted to believe him, to believe that she wasn't just an outcast, but it felt too good to be true. Could he really see her like that? For the first time that evening, she dared to look at him fully. His eyes were still locked on hers, but there was something different about them now, something less intimidating, something that made her feel seen. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maximus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, his large hand brushing lightly against hers, sending a shock of warmth through her body. "Because," he said, his voice barely audible now, "you are mine." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Lily's heart raced as the implications of his words sank in. Was this real? Could she really be the one he had been searching for? Maximus' words hung in the air, each syllable carrying the weight of a declaration that Lily could not fully comprehend. "You are mine." They echoed in her mind, repeating like a chant, but she could not make sense of them. Was it a command? Was it an invitation? She had never been anyone's to claim, not in the way he spoke of. She was just an omega, a mere shadow in a world of alphas and betas. Yet here he was, standing before her, his presence overwhelming, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity she could not escape. His hand still lingered near hers, warmth radiating from his touch, and for the first time in her life, Lily felt something she had long since given up on: hope. Her heart hammered in her chest as she searched his eyes for some sign, something to tell her that what he said was real, that she wasn't imagining this moment. But there was no sign of jest in his gaze. It was raw, sincere, and unyielding. "Do you know what that means?" Maximus asked, his voice softer now, a hint of tenderness threading through his words. Lily felt her throat tighten as she nodded slowly, unable to speak, the weight of his declaration pressing down on her. She had never dared to imagine a life like this. The idea of belonging to someone, of being more than just a discarded omega, felt like a dream she could never have. And yet, standing here in this opulent ballroom, before the most powerful alpha in the kingdom, it felt like a new reality. She started, her voice shaky, "I don't understand." "Why me?" Maximus stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because you are different," he said simply. "You are the one I have been searching for. The one who will stand by me, not as a servant, not as an object, but as my equal." The word sent a shiver through Lily. Equal. No one had ever called her that. She had always been the one who was lesser, the one who was overlooked, cast aside like a shadow in the corner of the world. But here, now, with him, she could feel something stirring inside her, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. She was no longer invisible. Maximus reached out then, his large hand gently cupping her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. His touch was warm, reassuring, and Lily couldn't help but lean into it, her body responding to his presence in a way she had never experienced before. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered, his voice a deep, comforting rumble. "I will protect you. I will never let anyone harm you again." Lily's breath caught in her throat as she tried to process his words. Protect her? She had never been anyone's to protect. She had always been the one who needed saving, the one who had to fend for herself. But now, here he was, promising her something she had never dared to dream of: safety, belonging, love. A future. But I'm just an Omega, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I'm not what you think I am? Maximus smiled then, a slow, knowing smile that softened the edges of his features. You are more than you think. And I see it, Lily. I see the strength in you. His words were like a balm to her wounded soul, soothing away years of rejection and doubt. She had never been seen for who she truly was until now. She had never been made to feel that she was worthy of someone's love, let alone the love of an Alpha King. As she stood there, gazing up at him, something inside her shifted. She no longer felt like an outcast. She no longer felt like the broken Omega. She felt chosen. And in that moment, she knew that her life was about to change forever. Maximus' words lingered in the air, wrapping around Lily like a cocoon. His gaze softened, and for the first time, she felt something inside her stir, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. Hope. He was different from the others. He saw something in her that no one else had ever bothered to notice. You are not just an Omega, he said, his voice steady and warm, you are a part of something much greater. Lily blinked, trying to process his words. It was hard to believe. All her life, she had been told she was weak, unimportant, and inferior. But in his eyes, she saw a truth she had never known. Maybe she wasn't just a forgotten shadow, after all. She took a shaky breath, gathering the courage to speak. I don't know how to believe that, she said softly, her voice trembling. I've never been anything more than what others said I was. Maximus stepped closer, his presence overwhelming but comforting at the same time. You don't need to believe it just yet, he said, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. But you will. In time. Lily felt a warmth spread through her at his touch, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel so alone. She didn't feel like the invisible Omega lost in the crowd. She felt seen, and that made all the difference. The music in the ballroom seemed to fade away as she stood there, lost in the depth of his gaze. The crowd around them no longer mattered. It was just her and him. But, why me, she asked again, the question still lingering in her mind. Out of all the people here, why would you choose me? Maximus' gaze softened even more, his voice lowering to a comforting whisper. Because, Lily, you are the one I've been waiting for. You are my mate, whether you believe it or not. The moon has already chosen you, and I will never let you go. His words sent a shiver through her, something warm and undeniable. She felt a strange pull inside her, a connection that she couldn't explain. She had never believed in fate, never thought that something like this could happen to someone like her. But standing before him now, she couldn't help but wonder if he was right. She could feel something stirring deep within her, something she had long since buried. It was as if a part of her was waking up, a part she had hidden for so long, afraid to let anyone see. Maximus reached out again, this time cupping her face gently in his hands. You don't have to understand it all right now, he said softly. But know this, you are not alone anymore. I am here, and I will be with you every step of the way. His words washed over her like a wave, and for the first time, Lily felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. She didn't have to carry it all by herself anymore. There was someone beside her, someone who believed in her. Maximus' thumb gently traced her cheek, and she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes for a moment. She had never known what it was like to feel safe, to feel cared for. But in this moment, with him, she finally understood. You're not just an Omega, he whispered again, his voice full of conviction. You are my Luna, my equal, my mate. The words sank deep into her heart, and for the first time, Lily believed them. She believed in herself. And as Maximus' arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, she realized that this was just the beginning of a new life, a life she had never imagined possible. A life where she was no longer invisible, no longer weak. She was finally home. Maximus held Lily close, his strong arms enveloping her as they stood there in the midst of the ballroom. The world around them seemed to fade into the background, as if nothing else mattered except the two of them. For the first time, Lily felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging she had never known before. His presence was like a shield, protecting her from the harsh judgment and whispers that had plagued her for so long. She could hear the soft thrum of her heart, steady and calm, as his warmth seeped into her skin. Maximus' voice broke through the silence, low and comforting. "You're not alone, Lily. I won't let anything hurt you." His words were a promise, a vow, and Lily felt every inch of it. She had spent her entire life fighting to be seen, to matter, and now, standing here in his arms, she finally felt like she did. "I've always been alone," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know what it felt like to have someone care." Maximus pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his gaze soft and full of understanding. "That's about to change," he said, his thumb brushing over her cheek. "You're mine now, Lily. And I will always protect you. Always." His words settled deep within her heart, and for the first time, she believed them. She believed in him. A warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name, but it was real. It was like everything she had ever wanted, everything she had ever needed, was finally within her grasp. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't just an Omega. She was his Luna. Maximus' gaze never wavered as he gently cupped her face, his fingers tracing her jawline with the utmost care. "You belong with me," he murmured, his voice barely audible, but it resonated in her soul. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she searched his eyes, looking for any sign of doubt, any hint that this was a fleeting moment. But there was none. All she saw was the truth in his eyes, the certainty in his touch. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone anymore. She was not the broken Omega she had been, the one who lived in the shadows. She was Lily Green, and she was the Alpha King's Luna. "I'll stay by your side," she whispered, her voice steady now. "No matter what." Maximus smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "And I'll never let you go," he promised. The crowd around them began to murmur, but neither of them paid any attention. All that mattered was the bond that was forming between them, the connection that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. As the music swelled around them, Maximus leaned in, brushing his lips softly against her forehead in a gesture so tender it took Lily's breath away. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to savor the moment, the feeling of being loved, of being cherished. She had never known anything like it. For the first time in her life, she felt truly at peace. Maximus pulled back slightly, his hand resting gently on her back. "Let's dance," he said, his voice low, but full of warmth and promise. Lily's heart fluttered as she nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. She had never danced before, never felt worthy of such a moment. But with him, everything felt different. The ballroom, the people, the world outside, they didn't matter. All that mattered was the man standing before her, the man who had claimed her as his, and the future they would build together. As Maximus guided her onto the dance floor, Lily felt a sense of freedom, as if all the chains that had bound her for so long had finally been broken. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer alone. She was his Luna, and nothing could ever take that away. Maximus guided Lily through the dance floor, his hand firm and steady on her waist as they moved together in perfect harmony. The music swirled around them, a soft melody that seemed to echo the new rhythm of her heart. She had never imagined she would find herself here, in the arms of the Alpha King, dancing with him in the center of a grand ballroom. Her past, the pain of rejection, the years of feeling invisible, all seemed so far away now. With every step, she felt herself growing stronger, more sure of who she was. The weight of his gaze on her made her heart flutter, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't just the Omega who had been cast aside. She was his Luna. And in this moment, that was enough. Maximus leaned in slightly, his breath warm against her ear as he spoke, his voice soft but commanding. "You're beautiful, Lily," he whispered. His words sent a thrill through her, a warmth spreading from her chest to the tips of her fingers. She could feel the sincerity in his voice, the way he saw her, not as a fragile omega, but as his equal. "Thank you," she murmured, meeting his gaze. She had never felt more alive, more worthy. She had always believed that someone like her would never be seen, never be loved. But Maximus had proven her wrong. He saw her, truly saw her, and he valued her. She was no longer invisible. Maximus' eyes softened as he twirled her around, his hand still resting on her back, guiding her effortlessly. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he said, his voice steady, as though he could sense the lingering doubts in her heart. "You've always been enough. You've always been worthy." Lily's breath caught in her throat as she tried to process his words. Could it really be true? Could she really be enough, just as she was? The years of insecurity, the harsh whispers of others, had conditioned her to believe she was less than others, that she would always be the one left behind. But Maximus was showing her a different reality. "I don't know if I can believe it yet," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent my whole life believing I wasn't enough." Maximus' expression softened further, and he pulled her a little closer, his hand resting gently on her waist. "You are more than enough, Lily. And you don't have to believe it all at once. But know that I believe in you." His words were a balm to her soul, soothing away the last of the doubts she had held onto for so long. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone anymore. She didn't need to fight for a place in this world. She had found her place, and it was here, with him. Maximus' grip on her tightened slightly, his eyes never leaving hers as they danced together. The music swelled, filling the space around them, but it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. She could hear the soft beat of her own heart, the steady rhythm of their dance, and the quiet certainty that was growing inside her. For the first time, she felt truly at peace. No more fears, no more doubts. Just him. Just them. The rest of the ballroom, the crowd, the whispers, they didn't matter. What mattered was the connection they shared. Maximus smiled as they continued to dance, the warmth between them radiating like a tangible force. "This is just the beginning, Lily," he said, his voice full of promise. "You and I, we're just getting started. Together, we can do anything." His words settled in her heart like a quiet vow, and she smiled back at him, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to face it. Ready to face whatever came their way, because she knew she wasn't alone anymore. She had him, and that was all she needed. Maximus held Lily's hand firmly as they stepped off the dance floor, the soft hum of the music fading into the background. The ballroom, once so intimidating, now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the quiet stillness between them. The moment had shifted, no longer about appearances or expectations, but about them, together in a world of their own. Lily's heart still raced, but now it was from a mix of excitement and anticipation, not fear. She had never imagined she would feel this way, this certain, this loved. As they walked across the room, the whispers of the crowd had quieted, and all that was left was the sound of their footsteps. Maximus stopped at a large window, the moonlight filtering in through the glass and casting a soft glow across his features. He turned to Lily, his eyes softening as they locked onto hers. "I know this all feels overwhelming," he said, his voice calm but earnest. "But I need you to know that this is real, Lily. We're not just pretending. This is not some fleeting moment. You and I, we're meant to be." His words hit her like a wave, washing over her with such intensity that she could barely breathe. She had always believed that the love she had dreamed of was too far out of reach, something reserved for people with power, or beauty, or the right connections. But now, standing here with Maximus, she was beginning to see that maybe, just maybe, she had always been enough. "I'm not sure I can believe it yet," Lily admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been invisible for so long, Maximus. I've spent my life hiding in the shadows, believing that I didn't deserve anything good. How can I believe this is real?" Maximus gently cupped her face with one hand, lifting her chin so that their eyes met once more. "Because you're mine," he said simply, his voice steady and full of conviction. "You don't have to believe it all right now. But I do. And that's enough for me. Lily's breath caught in her throat, and she found herself lost in the sincerity of his gaze. She had never been loved like this, so purely, so completely. She could feel the weight of his words, the promise behind them, and for the first time in her life, she wanted to believe. I don't know what comes next, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But I want to try. I want to try with you. Maximus smiled, the warmth of his smile melting the last remnants of doubt she had left. He leaned forward, his lips brushing softly against her forehead in a gentle, reassuring kiss. Then we'll take it one step at a time, he murmured. And we'll do it together. They stood there in the quiet of the night, the soft glow of the moon bathing them in its light. For the first time in Lily's life, she felt like she belonged, like she wasn't just surviving, but actually living. And with Maximus by her side, she knew she could face anything. Together, they were stronger. Together, they were unstoppable. And in that moment, Lily knew that the future was waiting for her, a future she would embrace with open arms, knowing that she wasn't alone anymore. She was his Luna, and that was enough. Maximus and Lily stood by the window, the soft moonlight casting a peaceful glow across the room. The night had settled into a quiet rhythm, the sounds of the ballroom now distant and faint. For a moment, they simply stood there, together in silence, their hearts beating in sync. The weight of the world outside seemed to disappear, leaving only the warmth between them. Maximus finally broke the stillness, his voice low and reassuring. Lily, he began, his tone softer than usual, I want you to know that this is just the beginning. The life we're about to build together, it's more than I ever dreamed possible. Lily turned to him, her eyes wide with emotion. I never thought I could have something like this, she whispered. A life with you, a future. Maximus took her hands in his, holding them gently. You deserve everything, Lily. You've always deserved more than what life has given you. Now, I can give you the world. Lily felt a surge of warmth at his words, but also a wave of uncertainty. She had never imagined this kind of life for herself. For so long, she had accepted that she was nothing more than an omega, someone meant to serve and never to lead. But here, in Maximus' arms, everything felt different. She was more than she had ever been before. But what about the future, she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. What if I can't live up to what you expect of me? Maximus smiled softly, his thumb gently brushing over the back of her hand. You don't need to live up to anything. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You are perfect just the way you are, and that's all I need. His words were a balm to her soul, soothing away the fears that had long held her captive. Maximus stepped closer, his presence enveloping her like a warm embrace. The future is ours to shape, Lily. And I promise you, I will stand by you every step of the way. Lily could feel the sincerity in his words, the unwavering support in his gaze. In that moment, all her doubts began to fade. She wasn't just the Omega who had been rejected by her own pack. She wasn't just the girl who had been forgotten. She was Lily Green, the woman standing beside the Alpha King, ready to face whatever came next. I'm ready, she said softly, her voice filled with newfound confidence. Ready for whatever comes our way. Maximus' eyes sparkled with pride as he gazed at her, his heart swelling with love and admiration. And I'll be right here, by your side, always, he replied, his voice full of promise. The weight of their connection felt so real, so undeniable, and Lily knew in her heart that this was where she was meant to be. Together, they would face whatever challenges the future held, and together, they would build a life filled with love, respect, and strength. As Maximus leaned in to kiss her forehead, Lily felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She had found her place in the world, and it was here, with him, by her side. The journey ahead would not always be easy, but with Maximus, she knew she could face anything. Together, they were unstoppable. The days that followed were filled with a sense of peace and purpose that Lily had never known before. Maximus was by her side every step of the way, offering her support, understanding, and love. They spent their time learning about one another, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. For the first time in her life, Lily felt truly understood, not just as an Omega, but as a person with her own dreams and desires. Maximus treated her As an equal, always valuing her opinions and respecting her thoughts. It was a relationship built on trust and mutual respect, something Lily had never believed was possible. The Alpha King's presence was calming, yet powerful, and Lily found herself becoming more confident in her own skin. The fears that had once plagued her began to fade, replaced with a quiet strength that came from knowing she was no longer alone. She had found a place where she truly belonged, and it was with Maximus. One evening, as they sat together in the palace garden, Lily gazed up at the stars. The night air was cool, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the space around them. Maximus, seated beside her, looked at her with a soft smile. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently, his voice filled with curiosity. Lily smiled back, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "How much has changed," she replied. "I never imagined I could have a life like this. A life with you." Maximus' smile deepened as he reached for her hand. "And you never will be alone again, Lily. I'll always be here for you. You're my Luna, and together, we'll face everything that comes our way." The warmth in his words wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing any lingering doubts. She had found something precious, someone who saw her for who she truly was, not just as an omega, but as an equal, a partner, and a mate. The future, once filled with uncertainty, now felt full of promise. Maximus stood, gently pulling her to her feet, his hand still holding hers. He looked down at her with such affection that Lily's heart swelled. "Shall we walk?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. Lily nodded, her heart light. "Yes, let's." They strolled through the garden together, the soft moonlight illuminating their path. As they walked, Maximus spoke of the future he envisioned for them both, one where they ruled together, not just with power, but with compassion, making decisions that would shape the kingdom for the better. Lily listened, her heart swelling with pride. She had never imagined a life like this, one where she could contribute, where her voice mattered. It was more than she had ever hoped for. The trust and respect between them grew with every conversation, every shared moment. They were a team, bound not only by the bond of matehood but by a deep connection that transcended the political responsibilities they both held. They talked about dreams, hopes, and even the challenges they would face as they moved forward together. But Lily no longer feared the future. She knew she had Maximus by her side, and together, they would face everything as equals. As they reached the edge of the garden, Maximus stopped and turned to face her. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss against her palm. "I'm grateful every day for you, Lily," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You show me a love I never thought possible." Lily's heart fluttered as she gazed at him, the man who had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. "And I'm grateful for you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For showing me that I'm worth more than I ever believed." Maximus pulled her into his arms, holding her close as the moonlight bathed them in its gentle glow. In that moment, Lily realized that everything she had endured, every moment of loneliness, had led her to this. To him. And she knew that the future, no matter what challenges it held, would be a beautiful one. Together, they would create a life filled with love, respect, and endless possibilities.